Welcome to Original Strange Fairy Tales and Other Stories, where we bring timeless tales and extraordinary lives to vivid life. Today we're stepping into the enchanted woods of history to uncover the story of two brothers whose names have become inseparable from the world of fairy tales, Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. They were not kings or warriors, but scholars and storytellers, guardians of ancient voices who gathered the dreams, fears, and wisdom of generations and gave them back to the world in the form of spellbinding stories. But who were the Brothers Grimm before they became legends? What hardships shaped their path? And what drove them to preserve the tales of witches, wolves, and wishes? In this special episode, I invite you to sit back, relax, and join me on a journey through their remarkable lives. A tale of love, loss, language, and legacy. This is the story of the Brothers Grimm, the keepers of forgotten magic. Let's begin. Once, long ago, in the shadow of forests dark and deep, in the ancient town of Hanau, where the river Main flows quietly past, two brothers were born who would one day gather the forgotten dreams of a people and bind them into books of ink and spell. Their names were Jacob Ludwig Karl Grimm and Wilhelm Karl Grimm. And though this tale holds no dragons, no castles, no enchanted frogs, it is, in its own way, a story of magic, the kind that lingers in language, in memory, and in the flicker of a fire as a story is told. They came into the world in the closing years of the 18th century, Jacob in 1785, Wilhelm in 1786, during a time when Germany was not yet a single kingdom, but a patchwork of principalities, duchies, and free cities, each with its own customs, dialects, and rulers. The Grimm family was respectable, though not noble. Their father, Philip Wilhelm Grimm, served as a town clerk and magistrate in Hanau, a man of law and reason. Their mother, Dorothea, was gentle and devout, with a quiet strength and a deep love of her children. The brothers spent their earliest years in a warm household filled with books and the sound of church bells, the rustle of pages, and the smell of ink and candle wax. But, as in so many tales, fortune turned. When Jacob was 11 and Wilhelm 10, their father died suddenly of pneumonia. With him went the family's stability. The Grimms were forced to leave their fine home in Steinau and move in with relatives in the nearby town of Kassel. Their mother, left with several children and little income, tightened the household like a belt and taught her sons the value of perseverance. And persevere they did. From that moment on, the two eldest brothers, Jacob and Wilhelm, stood as one, shouldering the burden of the family together. Where one went, the other followed. They were admitted to the Lyceum Fridericianum in Kassel, and though their pockets were often empty, their minds were always full. They walked for miles each day to school, clutching books bound in twine, sometimes skipping meals, but never lessons. Jacob, serious and determined, grew into a brilliant scholar. Wilhelm, though gentler and often sickly, kept pace with his brother in curiosity and insight. In time they were admitted to the University of Marburg, where they were meant to study law, the secure path of their father. But here, beneath the ivy-covered stones and the teachings of the great legal scholar Friedrich Karl von Savigny, they discovered a new and older magic, the magic of language, of history, of story. They were drawn into the study of ancient texts and old Germanic myths, of medieval ballads and Norse epics, of Latin manuscripts and rustic tales told in peasant kitchens. It was in these musty halls and quiet libraries that the idea took root, that the voices of the common people, the stories passed from mouth to ear for generations, were not mere entertainments, but sacred relics. They believed that within these folk tales, so often dismissed as simple amusements for children or servants, lay the heart of a people. These were stories not written by kings, but grown like moss on stone, shaped by time and weather, by fear and hope. The brothers, still young and unknown, decided they would become gatherers of these tales, rescuers of a vanishing oral tradition. And so, their great work began. They travelled through villages, listened at hearths, scribbled notes by candlelight. Their earliest sources were often women, educated middle-class women of Huguenot descent, who had learned the tales from nurses and servants. Contrary to the myth of wandering from cottage to cottage, many of the stories came to them through their circle in Castle, friends, acquaintances, and local storytellers. The first volume of their collection, Children's and Household Tales, was published in 1812. It contained 86 stories, dark, strange, sometimes cruel, always vivid. It included a little girl in a red hood who meets a wolf, a maiden with hair like sunlight trapped in a tower, a brother and sister lost in the woods, lured by a gingerbread house, a clever imp who spins straw into gold and dances around a fire. These tales were not theirs. They never claimed authorship. But they were the curators, and they polished the stones they found until they gleamed. At first the book was not a grand success. Critics called the stories too coarse, too brutal, too unsuited for children, but the brothers continued. They revised, expanded, refined. They removed some stories, added new ones, edited language and tone. They softened the violence in places, removed eroticism, introduced Christian morals, and reworked dialogue to suit the growing belief that these tales might serve children after all. By 1815, a second volume appeared. By 1857, the seventh and final edition contained over 200 stories, many now among the most famous in the world: Snow White, Cinderella, The Frog King, Sleeping Beauty, The 12 Dancing Princesses, the Bremen Town Musicians. But there were darker and stranger stories too, tales of severed heads, cannibal witches, enchanted brothers, and kingdoms made of glass. But the fairy tales were only part of their life's work. Jacob, ever the more scholarly, delved deeply into the structure of language itself. He uncovered patterns in how consonants had shifted over time, a discovery that would become known as Grimm's Law, a cornerstone of modern linguistics. He studied ancient runes, Old Germanic and Norse dialects, and helped to build the foundation of what would become comparative philology. Together, the brothers began an epic task, the creation of a German dictionary, Deutsches Wörterbuch, a monumental effort to document every word in the German language, its meanings, its history, its roots. It was a project so vast that it outlived them both. They only made it through the letter F before their deaths. And yet the work continued, and the dictionary stands today as a towering achievement, the result of a vision that few could see and fewer could undertake. Though they became respected scholars, they never grew proud. They lived modestly, devoted to their work and to each other. Jacob, reserved and intense, never married, preferring his books and thoughts. Wilhelm, more tender, enjoyed music and poetry. And though he married and had children, his heart remained always close to his brothers. In 1859, Wilhelm fell ill and died quietly. Jacob followed him 4 years later, in 1863, his heart broken by the loss of his lifelong companion. He died still working, still writing, still weaving the roots of language into history, But like the heroes of the very tales they had preserved, their spirits lived on. The Brothers Grimm left behind more than a collection of fairy tales. They left behind a vision of culture, of a people's soul preserved not in monuments or battles, but in the stories told to children before sleep, in the whispered warnings of grandmothers, in the rhymes and riddles of shepherds and seamstresses. Their work has been translated into over 160 languages. Their stories have been reimagined in paintings, ballets, operas, books and films. Their influence can be felt in the works of Tolkien, Pullman, Gaiman, and in every child who has ever heard the words, "Once upon a time." And so, the story of Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm continues, not in the echo of their footsteps on the cobbled streets of Kassel or Marburg, but in the breath of every storyteller, in the ink of every pen that writes of magic, and in the timeless voice that still calls out from deep within the forest. Come closer, child. Let me tell you a tale. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the life and legacy of the Brothers Grimm, two devoted souls who turned the fleeting whispers of folk tales into stories that still echo through time. Their work reminds us that even in the darkest forests, stories light the way, that behind every legend is a voice worth hearing, and behind every tale, a truth waiting to be remembered. I hope this glimpse into Jacob and Wilhelm's world inspires you to return to the stories they saved, or perhaps to hear them anew with fresh wonder and deeper appreciation. If you enjoyed this reading, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to original strange fairy tales and other stories. There are many more adventures ahead, with strange, beautiful, and unexpected tales still waiting to be told. And as always, your thoughts and comments mean the world to me. Feel free to share them below. A heartfelt thank you to the official Fairy Tale Enthusiasts members of the channel. Your support keeps this storytelling journey alive, and I'm truly grateful. Until next time, may your days be filled with wonder, your nights with dreams, and your heart with stories yet to be written. Take care, and I'll see you soon.